freelightroomtutorials.com. Easy to follow, easy to learn, designed to inspire. Hello everyone, my name is Matthew Schonwell from freelightroomtutorials.com. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to process a Milky Way photo from camera raw to the final processed image. That image that I'm going to process was submitted by a friend of mine named Spencer. Now, we had chatted about his most recent image that he captured on a trip in Tobermory. He had mentioned that he was having a bit of trouble with the grain and noise in the image, and I asked if I could edit his photo and see what I could do with his image in Lightroom. I first want to state that Spencer is the sole copyright owner of this image, and he has given me permission to process it and use it in this tutorial. Now, the first thing I noticed is that in the raw image there was a lot of grain and noise to start with. Now, that's not a terrible thing, but it means that the image already has noise that has to be removed. Now, as we move along, there's a lot more things that happen as we process the image, and when you already have a lot of noise, it can really hurt the final product of the image, being the clarity and the crispness of it. It's really important to note that when you are doing this kind of night photography, specifically long exposures, you want to try and capture an image that has the best quality possible. Now, in Spencer's case, I know he's shooting with a Canon XSI camera, which has the ISO boosted to 1600. Now, in this camera model, it was, I think, released about 5 years ago, and it's a great camera. It works well. The only difference is that the older cameras don't have the same low light abilities with ISO that the newer cameras do, so it's something he definitely has to work with. So, if I compare, for argument's sake, his raw image to this one, we can see that in his raw image, there's definitely a bit more grain starting out. Regardless, we're good to go, and we'll definitely have some fun with his image. The first step I took was in the lens corrections panel, and I enabled the lens correction for this profile for this specific lens. Now, I did this because each lens has its own unique distortions, and by enabling this profile, I was able to start to minimize any distortions created by this lens, which was a 10mm ultra-wide lens. Now, once I fixed the distortion problems, I then started to adjust the exposure elements that are all located in the basics panel. My first adjustment was to the temperature of the image. Now, as you can see, the temperature I chose was pretty cool. For the most part, I chose a temperature around 3500 Kelvin. Now, obviously, I chose that because the image by default in RAW was a bit warmer or orange, and I can only assume that that was because the light that was behind Spencer was a tungsten light. The next step was to add some exposure elements in the basic panel. Now, so you can see a bit more of the image when I do increase the exposure, and I put the exposure to about plus 0.65 for now. Before tackling the sky and the Milky Way, I'm focusing my attention on the dock and the elements in the foreground, which is the stuff that's closest to us, and the stuff that's below the horizon line. Now, that includes canoes, the docks, and the boat. Now, these elements are all important and are perfect for the framing of the Milky Way, which is just above them. Now, because there's a fair bit of initial grain, I decided to darken the elements, being the dock, the boats, and the canoes, because it's easier in this situation to darken them down by adding contrast and increasing my blacks than by trying to add light. Essentially, because if we add light by adding light to a grainy image, you'll see more grain and noise happen regardless. So we wanted to darken them down and have a nice little silhouette going on. Now, I have the foreground looking close to what I want. I'm focusing my attention on the Milky Way and how I can make it come to life. Now, to do that, I'm using a brush that I will add some contrast to the Milky Way and sky. Now, as you can see, as I paint my brush along the darker sections of the Milky Way, it provides some definition that before was more flat. Up to this point, our sky is really starting to come along. If you look at the before and after this far, we've done some really great changes that really are making a big difference. I'm going to continue to work in the Milky Way by bringing out the different elements that I can see. That includes the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. As you can see, I'm first working with the highlights that I made brighter and slightly orange. In the next step, I want to bring out the dark contrasts in the Milky Way. I did this step to help define the different tones of the Milky Way, as well as helping define its location in the sky. This step gives it a bit of a 3D look and makes it pop off the screen a bit. Now that I have the Milky Way looking close to what I want, I'm going to focus my attention on the horizon and the colors that are transitioning the water to the night sky above. Now, I'm going to use a gradient filter to do this. The first filter is designed to highlight the orange below the sky. As you can see, it really gives the horizon some great definition by adding the contrast to the black. I'm now going to use a radial filter to help define the Milky Way and give a smooth transition from the dark elements around it to the light colors of the horizon. As it stands, I'm pretty much done, and there are some final luminance and saturation adjustments to the orange of the horizon. Looking at the before and after, I was able to get some great definition in the Milky Way and enhance Spencer's photo by bringing out the colors that already existed. My name is Matthew, thanks for watching. If you would like me to process a photo of yours and create a free tutorial for you, please email me your image to info@freelightroomtutorials.com. Attention, Matthew. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and like it. For more tips and settings, check out freelightroomtutorials.com. freelightroomtutorials.com. Easy to follow, easy to learn, designed to inspire.